from Jam Street Media.
Hey everybody, I'm Matty. Just so you know, we've been doing a lot of video also at Jam Street. So I want to thank Isha who put all that stuff together. Today, we're going to talk about all the mistakes I made when I started my network, as well as just tips for if you're joining a network, things like that. We're going to be doing this series once a month. We'll talk about different things each month that can help you grow your business as an independent podcaster and an independent podcast network, because that's really a big focus for us here at Jam Street. So let's get it started. Isha, let's go. And then, by the way, we'll do questions afterwards, but go ahead and just bang those in. And then Isha will sort them out and we'll get them on there. So, all right. So first of all, this is a brag slide. I'm going to tell you why I put this up here. So some of you know, I was one of the founding guys at Stitcher 15 years ago. Back in the day, we weren't making money in podcasting for like 10 years, but we stuck with it. And now it's starting to, hey, it's looking good. I moved to iHeartRadio 6 years ago as the first VP of podcast programming there. We built the first network, about 1,600 shows, and then we brought in how stuff works. So, that was another great, time to like see how to build a network. Before that, I was a radio personality in New York City and San Francisco. I've created, I think it's closer to now 400 original podcasts. Launched the first university podcast department in the United States, which was, 10 years ago. So we've been doing that ever since. And then done a lot of branded over the last 6 years, and worked with a lot of companies, Fortune 1000, Fortune 500 companies. And we'll talk a little bit about branded today as well. So here's what we're going to go over. A network checklist, content and contracts, sales, promotion. So first of all, this is what not to do. Let me tell Isha, by the way, when the questions come up, it blocks it a little bit. Content checklist. Here's what not to do. Have unfocused. And what we're talking about is building a network. So if you are a podcaster who is considering like taking on other shows and building a network around your show, a lot of folks are doing that. And I encourage it. We need more independent networks. We need to bring those networks actually together to work together. And it's one of the goals of Jam Street Media. So first, having too many target audiences. I made this mistake. I had 4 or 5 verticals and none of them went together or made sense. We brought in just shows to have shows. So they had small followings. Some of the shows weren't focused as well as they could have been. Poorly produced shows. I see that a lot where people have, look at all our shows we have, but like the majority of them don't sound good. And then, your friends, okay? They're your friends and you feel like you have to put them on. But listen, if they don't fit the mission statement of your show, of your network, then they can't come on. And I'll explain mission statement on the next slide. Excuse me, I wet my whistle. Okay, here's what you should be doing. Think about verticals and what space you want to focus on. Is it mostly female content? Is it true crime? Is it sports? Is it whatever? But keep it consistent, because that way you can sell across your whole network, which is the whole point of having a network, because you have more inventory to sell. And also then the shows can cross promote each other. When you have 15 shows, but none of them make sense as far as sharing audience, it's not what a network should be. The other thing I see a lot is people will launch a network, especially when they're coming in from out of the business, and they'll just be like, oh, we're going to put up these shows and people will come. And they don't, because you don't have a couple shows to anchor the network. So, it's a good idea to have a couple established podcasts that will help anchor your network. And then that will bring people to your other shows. Having lots and lots of shows versus a few strong ones. More is not always better. Again, that's more to manage. That's more, especially, and I'll tell you this, the shows that get the least downloads are the ones who are the biggest pains in the butt and going to always ask tons of questions. So again, focusing on the strong shows is the way to go. The other thing is this content that advertisers want? So I learned this early on. we had a couple very, male focused shows. And listen, they don't have as many advertising options as female led shows. So that was something I had to learn. That was a learning curve I had to do. And also quality control. Have your shows consistent. Have them have a great sound. Remember, the first minute someone decides whether it's crap or it's good. And you got to make sure your shows all sound good, all start strong. This is something we do at Jam Street. Any shows that we bring on, I work with, I coach. We don't want shows that are just go do it. We want to make sure we're providing help. And if you're joining a network, look for that. Look for a network that's not just, hey, we've got 10,000 shows. You'll be one of them. And we promise we'll get you ad sales and we'll give you lots of attention. No, they're not. They're not going to give you lots of attention unless you're you're making hundreds of thousands of downloads. And then the cost. How much do these shows cost? And then what is the long term on them? Because listen, the first year you're building audience. The second year you're cementing some audience. And the third year or third season, that's when you're really kind of in the place to make money from different sources, which we'll talk about in a bit. Contracts. This is important. If you are starting a network, you need to have a contract with all your shows. No handshake agreements, no emails. Who owns the RSS feed? That is your most valuable piece of property. Who owns the IP? We try with the shows that we're creating with someone. We own the feed, they own the IP, but we get to, that feed is important because if we build a big audience and then the creator decides, I want to go somewhere else, that's fine. But then we still have a nice audience on that feed we can put some similar content on. So that's good. Derivatives, very important, especially if you're doing stuff with IP that is valuable. So who owns those? What's the split? And who is shopping it? So, we shop our IP and we take a percentage, but the majority goes to the creator because it's their intellectual property. But because of the podcast and because of what you've done for them in the podcast, that will get them noticed by somebody who might want to take them on as a television, movie, or book project. Events, merch, subscription, all has to be worked out ahead of time. A lot of times you'll make more money from merchandise and events than you will from the podcast. And then subscription, which is something I do not suggest you do until you're very well established. For us, it's been like the third season of our shows. And that's when we feel like, okay, we've got a good, strong audience who might pay a couple bucks for some extra stuff. A lot of people launch subscription right away. I don't suggest doing that. Quick plug, we use Supercast for our subscription and we love them. Don't overpromise and set expectations when signing. Man, this happens a lot. Networks are like, oh, well, we're going to do this and we're going to give you this many impressions and, really pick that stuff apart. Where are those impressions coming from that they're promising you? Are they going to be on the right shows? Do they have a salesperson who is actively selling your show? Are they, going to give you attention? And if you're signing up with this is things you need to ask as somebody signing into a network. But if you're starting a network, have that laid out, and don't overpromise anything because you don't like coming back and saying, well, it didn't work out the way we thought it would. It's podcasting. You can predict only so much. It really is going to come down to the content. That's why, we talk about content first. And then don't use the first free contract you see online. Those need to be customized for what you're doing and what you're doing with the show. And listen, this is the podcast industry. We're nice people. We help each other out. That's what makes us different from other industries in our space. So you've got a friend who's got a network, or somebody's got a network, or you want to talk to me. Anybody who's really in the industry will be happy to help you out because we just want to have podcasts become bigger. That's our whole thing. It's always been our thing. And helping each other out is how we do that. Sales. Learned a lot about sales in the last couple of years. When we started, we didn't have a good projected budget for our shows. We weren't planning for a lot of different things, CPMs in and out of season, fill rates in and out of season, all those kind of things. Have a plan for outside sales and dynamic audio insertion. And don't choose the first RSS provider you walk by their booth or you talk to. Really do your homework and find one that is right for you and your show. I love Lionel Richie, by the way. Just want to put that out there. So for sales, here's something you need to do. Pick a provider who does dynamic ad insertion and can deliver a good fill rate. Not all RSS feeders are alike or will give you attention. Also picking one that can do promotion and help you with that and all of that stuff. By the way, if you hear a dog in the background, that's Kelly Clarkson. She's 15 and she's a little nutty, so she whines a lot. So making sure you've got a plan for sales. We use Sounder now, and it's because we moved over from Megaphone because a lot of reasons. A lot is the attention we get, and also their transcription stuff is amazing to help people find your podcast. So quick plug there, but absolutely love Sounder. Finding somebody to do sales for you. So let's say you're looking for sales. Excuse me for 1 minute. I've got to call my dog. Thank you. Oh, working from home. Finding somebody to do outside sales. We've had True Native working on our podcast for a while and they do a great job, and then understanding what that rev share is going to be. Some of them are going to be 70-30, some are going to be, 80-20, which is great. But just knowing, again, as you're planning budgets, hey, there's a lot of little chunks that come out of that CPM. So, if you just plan like $20 CPMs, that's not how it's going to work if you have somebody doing sales. And if you have somebody inside doing sales, they get a commission or they get paid. So understanding all of that. And listen, for us, we want to get our shows at 30K a week, at least to get, to make a little money. It's still, not easy to make a lot of money from podcasts, despite all the snake oil salesmen out there who will tell you, start a podcast, you'll make a ton of money. It's not. And anybody who's been in the business will tell you the same thing. But be creative with that. So here's some stuff that we do that I found has been very popular with advertisers. So we're not just selling you a CPM for the podcast. We're also incorporating in the social impressions, maybe being involved with events. When we work with radio companies, we also say, hey, the promos for this is something we did at iHeart. You're also getting promos on the air that are mentioning your business, but just be creative. Now, we were talking about branded earlier. Almost every network that I work with and talk to has some kind of branded strategy because there's a lot of branded work out there. There's a lot of people doing it, but finding a client that fits with what you do can really generate some good income and pay for the projects you want to do. So with branded, have an approach for that. If you don't, look at that. But then you got to find a way to get it in. So most of the folks I've known who've done branded, they're getting clients from people they know, places they've worked with in the past. That's a good place to start. Sorry, my dog. All right. So the last piece of the puzzle that a lot of people don't think about is promotions. Don't have a budget for promotions. That's not a good idea. Relying on social media is not a good idea. You may think, well, this person's got 1 million people on TikTok. Guess what? That audience might not translate to a podcast. Having big guests does not translate to people coming and listening to your podcast. One advice I give all my hosts is to make sure they understand listeners come back for the host. They'll come for a guest to start, but they stay for the host. So the show has got to be good. And then just launching a show and then trying to figure out promotion. That doesn't work. So plan to spend money on social, paid social. There are direct downloads that you can buy and, do, banner ads and certain things. And also, fundamentally, getting podcasts on other podcasts. So we did a small buy for one of our podcasts on a not a huge podcast, but the audience was perfect. And it times our numbers by 1,000. Like, it was crazy how well it worked. But that's, this is where you've got to know the other people in the business and in your space. And it's like anything else. Listen to everybody who's in your space. If somebody's doing it right, reach out to them, talk to them. That's what we do. I do a lot of promo swaps because they're friends and I know them, and we do promo swaps and help each other out. But putting a little money in paid is always a good idea. And then, like, when you have guests, provide a detailed post, make sure you've always including a smart link in there. And don't rely on them to do it. Write the post, send it to them, tell them they can change it up if they want. But most people like that. And that makes sure that they get their post out and not just retweet or, repost, because that won't generate the same kind of attention as a organic one will. And then just know this is a 24/7 job. When you're doing social media promotion, you've got to be there and build your community. That's what social media is about. It's building your community, but you don't build community if you're not interacting with them. So, getting in, interacting on social, interacting on Reddit groups that are similar to, what you're doing. This is a great way to start building audience and bringing people in. And word of mouth is still a huge thing in our industry to get people to come in. And some other considerations to think about. Do you have business insurance? I didn't. And I now have Thimble, and I'm not promoting it for any other reason that they're cheap and they do a great job. And if you're going to go looking for funding, that is an opportunity that you need to look at closely. What are you willing to give up? Do you have a great deck? We do a lot of consulting for companies and look at their decks and seeing who they want to talk to, because if you get someone who funds you who does not understand the industry or, wants to just get into the industry, you may end up with a partner who is going to want to lead you down bad directions. And because they gave you money, you're going to have to do it. So think about that. Hopefully you're building an LLC around your network, but plan for the divorce. Best advice I ever got. Enjoy the marriage, but plan for the divorce. So my first LLC for Jam Street, I had a partner. And after a few months, it just wasn't working out. It wasn't a good fit for her. So, but we had worked out how that would work to get out of there. So it wasn't a hard thing to do. But you got to have that planned out. Like, always have those things planned out, because what your company looks like today is not what's going to look like in a year. The people you have now are probably not all going to be the people you have in a year, especially as you grow and you get, more income coming in. So, really plan for that. Accounting, bookkeeping, payroll, most likely you're going to have to do all of that yourself. QuickBooks, man, I'm on that every day. And trust me, I'm not the guy you want doing numbers, but it's been super helpful for us to make sure our contractors get paid, because, a lot of the things, but one other thing you need to consider is how much in-house production are you doing and how much out of house. And that's also going to go into your revenue split, by the way. So if you're doing all the production, 50-50 is not a fair split for you. If you're doing all the promotion, all the production, and they're just hosting, you've got to make sure that you're covered, because you're carrying the weight. So whoever's carrying the weight should benefit from that. So if they're providing the show and you're just distributing it, then that should go a little more towards them. But again, it's like, you got to lay out the cost. Like, how much are you going to spend on promotion? How much is the time worth? Your time worth? How much is the time worth of your team who's going to build social media assets? You've got to put a price tag on all of that stuff. And listen, your price tags for that and for like branded are going to be lower when you start. You build a reputation, then you can start charging more. We definitely charge more than we used to for branded, because we also do a bigger thing as far as, what kind of podcast we want to do, trying to take things that aren't just thought leadership and do more storytelling, and that's more expensive. And then just remember, most likely you're not going to get a paycheck for a while. And if you don't have a plan for that, you should have a plan for that. Because listen, it's a slow roll. It's a startup. They don't happen overnight. You've got to be prepared to, put in a ton of hours for not a lot of pay, but know you're building something great. And also, this is the one I hate to tell people, but you got to know when to throw the towel in too. When we launched after our first year, everything went wrong. COVID, couldn't do any branded stuff during that. And none of us were on payroll. And, we found a great partner. We all went and helped build a maze, Media Labs. And then, after that year, I got more grounding and then decided to come back and restart my network. But that was not my plan at all. So, you got to be nimble when you're putting all this stuff together. And conclusions. So if you're still thinking about doing this, remember, content. It's got to be good. It's got to fall in line. You've got to have consistent content, consistent verticals. Those contracts are important. Get them right. Leave no questions. When you want to make money, pick the right partners, pick the right RSS feed provider, pick the right outside sales, pick everything that, do your homework, talk to other people, call me, call anyone. We all, some of us in the industry that are, kind of more on the influential space. This is what we do. We connect people. We want everyone to grow and get better. That is there is, to me, I don't look at anybody in this industry as a competitor, because we're still too new to be in that mindset. We've got to help each other out, especially us independents. Like, we got to stick together, because if not, there's going to be like 3 companies owning every podcast in the world, and we don't want that. And then having a good promotional plan. You'll never succeed without one. Look at that good-looking team there. James, Quinn, Selena, Vince, Vanessa, Savannah, Isha. We got a few folks, on our team that have done just a fantastic job. And just telling you what we do. I got to do my plug here. Hey, man, got you here. First of all, we pride ourselves in world-class audio. So one of the things I do is I build a lot of pilots for celebrities, influencers, people who have, the networks that are interested in them, and they need to build a show that's going to work. So I work with them. We build the pilots, and sometimes we keep doing them, and sometimes we, hey, have fun. Good job. Glad you sold it. Networks, our network shows are growing. By the way, we just announced we're doing season 3 of Donnie Brasco, October 12th. It comes out, and it's all the tapes that Donnie carried in his boots and stuff. It's very good. And then of course, branded, that's part of the strategy. We have a select number of branded clients that we work with, and a select number of companies that we do the branded for them. Because I've been doing branded for so long, I understand that, and it's not for everybody, guys. I'm going to say it right now. Like, branded is hard, because you got a lot of interaction. You got to have, project managers. It's work, but if you're doing it right, it should be always 50% profit. So again, that's money that you can put into the shows you really are passionate about. And then consulting's, a big thing for us. I'm working with quite a few networks now who are building or want to have me do an overview of like their production department or anything like that. So if you're doing that, hit us up. We work with a handful of new shows. I will say we're not kind of in the business of working like first-time podcasters, but, more shows that are established and need some direction to go to the next level. And then podcast tech companies. We're working with quite a few right now, including, Stampede, and, we're working with Potter and Audio Labs, because they're companies that I know, having come from tech and podcasting, have potential. So if you've got a tech startup in the podcast space, I'm your guy. All right, there you go. There's all my information. And again, always available for a call. I always, this is what we do. This is what I do. And happy to talk to anybody about that. So I think we might have some questions coming in, or no questions, but get them started, man. Okay. Alex wants to know the best way to differentiate yourself from other podcasts. Okay. So first of all, look at the landscape of the podcast in your niche, see what they're doing. Most of them will probably be doing the same thing. So if you're doing a podcast that is, conversational, how do you build segments in that are yours? In the old days in radio, we call them benchmarks, things that you're known for that nobody else does. Games segment, where you bring in, an intern and quiz them. Anything like that you can do with the guests. Again, because when we make podcasts, we're thinking about like all the assets. What do we get out of the podcast, especially with branded? Like how many assets can we give to feed the content machine? So with our podcast, we want to make sure we have like standalone segments that we can also put on YouTube and bring in folks that way. We have a big YouTube strategy with all of our shows and TikTok, which, we are finding some great success promoting on there and other things. But that's really the way to do it, is like, just know who else is out there and then do something that's unique and a little bit different. Devin, what do you recommend for cross promoting within your competition? Don't like that word. And other podcasts within your same vertical. Reach out. But make sure they have similar audiences. You don't want to do a cross promo with a show that's got 500 downloads a month and you have 15,000. You need to, find, get in, see, like look at the rankings, see if they're in the same spot or a little bit better. That's always a little better, but just reach out. First of all, reach out and say hi and get to know the person. That's the best thing. I'm a big LinkedIn nerd. I'm on LinkedIn on the weekends even. But I do that because when I see a new company or something is exciting, I link in with the CEO and get to know them a little bit. And then maybe there's some work that we can do together down the road. But the same thing with podcasts, just reach out, let them know. And then again, as you're thinking of starting a network, keeping in mind, like, who are the shows you'd really like to have on it? And, seeing what kind of, if you can work something out with them. Again, they might be things that we're going to, they might be things that will help anchor your network. So funding, there's a lot of ways to do funding. There's convertible bonds, which is very, very popular. A lot of investors like that. And I'm not going to get into what all that means, but that's a great way to go. And I'm going to tell you this, usually if you're bringing in a big investor, you're going to talk to them first and see how they want to do it. Especially if you don't have a lot of experience funding a company. But again, having somebody who's had companies funded, run that by them to make sure that you're getting, a good deal and you're not giving too much away. But it's kind of, if you really want to like supercharge and go hard, it's you want to like put people on salaries. It's almost imperative to have some funding to start, especially like we have a couple of shows that we just signed that are going to be very expensive to produce, but they have excellent potential for revenue. So, having some money in the bank for that or having them pre-sold is very helpful. That's why those decks and those trailers that you put one together for each of your shows, so your sales team has something to go out and try to get somebody excited about to sponsor. Jen, we love Everything Podcasts. You guys don't know them. Best branded podcast company in Canada, maybe the world. Question: what do you think about setting up a podcast network as a nonprofit compared to an LLC? Well, you're making money, so you're profitable. But if you are doing a nonprofit network, and again, all the proceeds are going to something, of course, that could be paying some salaries and things like that. That's an idea. I am not a lawyer. I am not, a financial whiz, but I think that would be something you really want to run by a good lawyer. And again, lawyers are all different. Finding a lawyer that's done entertainment is pretty important because we're a different industry. It's like accountants. I tell everybody, get an accountant who's had entertainment experience because there's a lot of things that they know to help write off or that, you can do that a normal accountant may not. Okay, to build a network, acquisition versus development, new shows, pros and cons of each. Okay, that's a great question. So the cons of acquisition are the shows up to your standard? Are they consistent? Are they shows you can trust to put their ad markers in, to do the reads when you send them, things like that? But acquisition is a lot cheaper. It's a lot cheaper. You're just signing a deal. They're already doing the production. Developing shows is expensive and time consuming. And again, a lot of the times, when we started Jam Street, we had 20 shows in development. After we developed them and we did the first episode, I kept like 4, but we were doing that to see if we found some diamonds in the rough, and we didn't. But I think that'll also come with, having, again, understanding like what's good IP and what's not, what's something that is unique and special. And let me just say, like, I'm not in the business to do other people's stuff. I want to make cool shows, man. I want to win awards. I want our shows to, be top 10 in Apple. So I want to build those shows, but they're expensive. And honestly, when you start, you should probably focus on like 2 good projects and just focus on those and get those great. And then, if you have some acquisition stuff to kind of get some money rolling in, that's a good way to go too. Scripted podcast pilots. So scripted is something I will admit is newer for me. It's not what I do. I mean, I do, we do narrative scripted, but so I don't know if you're talking about narrative scripted or fiction scripted. Fiction scripted is something we're just diving into. Understanding that market and the cost is the big deal, because normally, a lot of folks are coming in from movies because they know they can test IP out as a podcast and spend a couple $100,000. Whereas if they tried to get a script read, it's $100,000 just to have somebody read your script. And then it goes to somebody. I mean, it's a very expensive process. So they might not always be looking for the numbers as much as just making sure it's engaging and people are enjoying the content. Scripted is expensive, but scripted is what I love to listen to. I love it. I love scripted. So, just make sure that the costs are there. And again, with scripted, have a paid promotional plan for that. Get it out there. Nobody's just going to come find it. And you put all that effort into it. You want people to listen to it. You want to find the right ways to do the promotion on that. Tracking shows a brand new network if they're established and making money and you're not yet. How do you outline what's in it for them and when you're just starting out? So again, that is tough. You've got to have some kind of track record. If you don't have a track record with your podcast, it's very hard to say, hey, I'm starting a network, come join it. I'm going to be like, well, what have you done? So that's why it's good to have a couple shows. So those bigger shows, if you want to bring them in, give them an outrageously good rev share. Outrageously good at rev share, but make sure you've set your sales up. Like, listen, we have sales. We're going to do that. We're going to give you attention. That's something they're going to want to hear because most likely there's somewhere they're not getting attention. But let's get, that's kind of, the main thing is to make sure that, you've got something to offer them. And again, if not, it's like, hey, we want you to anchor the network. So we're going to do anything we can to get you. Hi, Gabrielle. What are the first few hires you should make? A head of production, number one, somebody who can really look at what a production will cost and do. Quinn Greenhouse, who's my new head of production, is just amazing. She can do a lot of things, and making sure that that head of production can do a lot of things, like understands narrative, understands sound design, understands, all these things, because you can freelance the editing. That's not too hard to freelance. And then you can, have a head of production who can help them put it together and like build structures for the shows so that then you can hand it off to a green or producer. What we do, I'm lucky I teach. So like I take my best seniors, bring them in to intern for a little bit so that they learn everything. And, of course, if they're not getting college credit, still pay them for paid projects. Don't like free internships. The other thing is then they usually will become an associate producer, an assistant producer within a month or two, or working on social stuff. Like there's ways. But having that time to like see what their skill set are. Some of them come in thinking they want to do audio, and it turns out they're really good at doing video and headliners. So, or vice versa. I would say finding quality freelancers who are inexpensive that you trust. You've got to trust your freelancers. Like, you're putting a lot on them, especially if they're doing, the vocal editing. And by the way, with transcripts, that's one of the reasons like Sounder, we get a transcript right away. In other, Descript, other things like that. You can do a lot of that pre-editing on that and then send it over to somebody. But, that's an important hire. And then, figuring your sales out, which again, probably for the first year, you're going to do third party. You're not going to be able to afford to bring in a salesperson. Bringing in salespeople on commission only, it's tricky. You're not going to find a lot of really good salespeople who want to do that. So, you should have something budgeted for that. That's a big one. And then somebody who understands social media and understands, some of the marketing things. And again, those are things you can kind of find and hire some folks who do it freelance. There's so many great freelancers in our industry who need work and deserve work. So again, ask around, ask people, who are you using? Who do you suggest? And most of us will steer you hopefully in the right direction. Michael, how would you scale from a service-based company to a network? Okay. So having a service-based company is great because you've got the people to build shows. I would suggest that you build a couple shows, and then think about launching the network. But definitely making sure that you're focused, you still got to bring income in. So figuring out time and value in the project. So picking some good projects. And there might be people that you're servicing and you like their shows a lot and you tell them, hey, we're building a network and we can help you get better. That's the other thing. I think that's another value proposition, that we have is that, I very much label our company as an educational company as well. Cause we all teach each other. We learn, we have lunch and learns. We're on Slack talking to each other and somebody puts something up, everybody's ego's out the door. It's like, hey, I think we could fix that. We can fix that. And that's important. And I know, the podcast that we brought on early on, like The Big Swing with Ross Stripling, they were so happy to have us come in and restructure the show and then relaunch it with a new structure. And then their downloads tripled. So that was a really good project for us to take on. So again, finding those diamonds in the rough, there are a lot out there that are good shows, have good communities, but they just need that little extra effort to become, up here as far as shows go. Thank you, Mark. How would you prioritize audience growth tactics that would give a startup network currently drawing 7K to 8K weekly downloads to a path of 10K downloads consistently? So I would definitely, cross promo doesn't, sometimes it's too incestuous. It doesn't really build a network. Doing a little paid, focusing on the couple shows that anchor the network and getting them the higher downloads. And then that will feed into your other shows when you're doing cross promo. But just trying to spread all that out over all your shows. I mean, it's hard, but you have to have a good ear and really, trust your gut if you do and say, okay, these are the shows, like, that's kind of my little secret sauce is pretty good at listening to shows and knowing if it's something that's got legs. So knowing that and focusing on the ones that have legs, because they'll bring the whole network up. But that's a big one, really doing that. Hey, thanks guys. Everybody is saying they're liking it. So, but we're going to be doing more of these down next month. We'll do them on all kinds of topics. We'll do, certainly one on how we're doing paid promotion and where we're doing our paid promotion. We'll do one on branded. And if people have suggestions for things that they, would like to do, and we'll be bringing on some big bigger folks in the industry who are smarter than me and can talk to everybody about stuff. But hey, thanks for coming to this first one. I'm thrilled. If you're a podcast movement, please come up, say hi, and introduce yourself. I love podcast movement. I love all the people we meet there. So make sure you do that. And again, if you've got questions or you've got a network that might need a little consulting, hit me up and we'll talk. Okay. I think, Isha, is that it? Are we done? All right. So again, thank you. Go check out our shows on Jam Street Media. Deep Cover, season 3 coming in October. Please listen. And Appalachian Mystery just wrapped an amazing season that you should listen to. It was a brilliant view into, there was a killer on the Appalachian Trail targeting lesbian couples, but it's more, you're going to find out about how effed up the laws were in the 80s. It really touched me in so many ways. So hopefully you can go check that out as well. And as our other shows that are out there. So thanks, everybody.